Creating a herbal apothecary for your homestead is a beneficial way to keep your medicinal herbs and essential oils, jars, bottles and brews organised. I use medicinal herbs for making healing remedies for all sorts of ailments. I make oils, tinctures, herbal vinegars. I use them in salves, soaps, in beauty products, heat sacks, for cold packs and even for pest control. They're also good for poultices and for making teas. Growing and preserving your own herbs means you know that they're grown clean without chemicals, they're picked at their peak, and how fresh they are when you come to use them. Even if you're growing in pots, you can harvest small amounts of herbs regularly when they're at their peak. Picking a small amount of herbs at a time may not seem beneficial, but over the whole season you'll end up with quite a lot. Knowing what you want to use your herbs for, what ailments you want to treat or remedies you want to have on hand for a homestead emergency, and knowing what herbs grow well in your area will help you to decide what you want to grow for your apothecary cupboard. Every medicinal herb has numerous uses, and there are numerous herbs that can be used for the same ailment, so you should be able to find one that is suitable for your needs. I only use aloe vera fresh when I need it. I recommend that you grow it if you can where you live, but it's not one you need to put in your apothecary cupboard. If you're buying your herbs for your apothecary, make sure you buy them from a reputable seller, so you can be sure you have quality, fresh herbs with no pesticides or chemicals used on them. Using toxic plants for healing purposes isn't going to work so well. If you're foraging for herbs, be certain of the plant's identification. Some herbs look very similar and can have very different outcomes. Don't forage next to farms or busy roadways, as pollutions and chemical runoff are absorbed by the herbs, making them not so good for eating or using for medicinal purposes. Only harvest a small amount, leaving most of the plant to recover, continue growing, or to set seed so that it can make more plants and more medicine for everyone. When and how you harvest your herbs depends on the part of the plant that you're wanting to harvest for the medicinal purpose, and the type of plant that it is, whether it's an annual, a biannual or a perennial. Harvesting the leaves is best done in spring, maybe even early summer, when the leaves are nice and fresh and newly grown. Harvest the herb flowers when the flowers are in bloom and they're at their peak and they look beautiful. I usually harvest them in the morning when all the oils are strong in the flowers. Harvesting roots and tubers is best done when the plant is dormant, so that can be the end of autumn or through winter if you don't get heavy snow. I live in an area where I can harvest my tubers and roots all through the winter. You want to do it when the plant has died down, before any snow or really heavy frost comes. That's when all the goodness is inside the roots and tubers and they're not putting all their energy into growing leaves and flowers. If the herb is an annual, that means the plant only lasts 1 year. They die off and they have to be replanted every year. Perennials last a long time. They're plants that just keep coming back each year on the same roots and tubers. And biennials are plants that last for only 2 years. The first year they produce their leaves, which is the foliage, and then the second year they produce their flower. If you're going to harvest the root of a biennial, you need to harvest it before it goes to flower, because otherwise all that energy goes into the flower and it will no longer be in the root or the tuber. But if you want the flower, then let it go to flower and then harvest the flowers. I have 3 dark burgundy roses. They're standard plants that I took cuttings from the farm I used to live at before I lived at Moat Cottage. It was an old homestead, and these roses have the most amazing scent. and I use them in salves, soaps, pillows, and even lemonade. Mugwort grows big quite quickly, so harvesting the leaves is a good opportunity to prune it, to keep it in shape and get it to the shape that you really want it to be in. And you get the benefit of using the leaves. I like to clean up the herbs outside so that I can drop the bits on the ground and they go back into the earth. Any damaged or dry leaves that are a little bit yellowy, I take them off because I don't want them. I want the prime, good quality leaves for my preserving to use in my apothecary. Drying herbs can be done in numerous ways. I dry my herbs in many different ways depending on what part of the herb I'm drying, whether it's the root, the tuber, the leaves or the flowers, what time of year it is, how warm or cold it is, and the humidity at the time of year that I'm drying something. It also depends on how I'll be using the final product. I'm drying my mugwort in small bunches that I'll hang from the curtain rail. I tie them up with brown string and I make sure that it's nice and tight, because when the herbs dry, they shrink down and they can fall out of the string if it's not tight enough. Hang them out of direct sunlight, and you can also hang them on sticks that are hanging on the wall as well, or broomsticks or ladders. It all works the same. For my smaller batches of drying, I use paper bags. I have the same bags every year, and each bag has a different type of herb in it. This bag is for rose petals, and I make sure I break them up so that they can dry evenly and there's no parts that will go mouldy. I make sure the bags go in a warm location. That can be the car or a warm room or a warm cupboard, but they do need to be shaken every day. I add freshly harvested flowers into the bag when they come in from the garden. This is great for the small batches because I'm only getting a few flowers every day, and that way I can eventually have a full bag of flowers. But I do leave enough room so that the air can circulate when I'm shaking the bag, so that they don't go mouldy. I find that using a dehydrator is good for the roots and tubers, as well as when you've got big batches of leaves to dry. Herb leaves like mugwort and comfrey need to be dehydrated on the lowest temperature, which is about 35 degrees Celsius. That's 95 degrees Fahrenheit. If the leaves are big like the comfrey, then you can chop them up a bit so that it helps with the drying process and there's more airflow can circulate around the dehydrator. With the mugwort, I don't worry about cutting it up. There's enough room for the air to circulate, and you can have more than a single layer of the herb leaves. Labelling your herb storage containers, your oils, tinctures and other concoctions is very important. You need to know what is in each container. You also need to know if there's a use by date on anything as well, or the date that you made something, so that you're using things while they're still good. You can use oil-based textures on your jars. That's good for labelling, but I find if it's an oil-based product that the paint comes off the jar. I've printed out some labels onto some vinyl sticker paper, so my jars are getting an update. When your herbs are fully dry and there's no moisture left in them, they're ready to store away in airtight containers. I use jars with lids on them, and I store them in my apothecary cupboard, which is a dry, dark location. Depending on how I'm going to be using the herb, depends on how I store the herb, whether I blend it up into a powder, whether I have it chopped up and just store it in a jar, or whether I keep it whole in the jar. Some things I even keep in bunches and just leave them hanging until I need to use them. It really depends on what it is. I usually store the flowers, leaves and roots or tubers of the same plant in separate jars so that I can use the part of the herb that I want to use for whichever purpose I'm using it for. Comfrey is a good example of this. I like to diversify where I keep my comfrey, so I have the leaves dried and I turn some into a powder. I have some whole, and I also have the root dried and I have the root in the freezer as well. When I'm using the root for face masks, it can't be dehydrated because if you add water to it, it just doesn't work the same for that purpose. My bigger batches of herbs, like my lavender flowers and some of my calendula flowers, I keep on the top shelf in my kitchen, only because they're in much bigger jars and there's not enough room for everything in my apothecary cupboard. I also keep a sample of all of my herb parts in the apothecary box so that I have a sample of each part of each herb so I can grab it in a hurry if I need it. By the end of the season, this box will be filled with a variety of all the different herbs that I'll be using over the year. We've finally made it to the apothecary cupboard. This is where I store all my dried herbs, my essential oils, carrier oils, tinctures that have been brewed, infused oils and vinegars, some other remedies. It's all in date, fresh, labelled well and organised so that I can find everything. Up the top here is where I keep the excess things that I've made, like salves, bath salts and soaps, so that they're easy to find when we need them. In this part of the apothecary cupboard, I store the box of apothecary herbs. I keep my vodka, which is my alcohol that I use for tinctures. I also store all my jars and containers. I use these amber jars with lids for brewing tinctures and herbal oils. The dropper bottles are good for tinctures that go under the tongue. Essential oil bottles for mixing up aromatherapy blends. Amber jars for ointments, lotions or salves. The roller bottles are used for herbal oil applications and deodorants. The aluminium containers are for salves. And the spray bottles are for topical tinctures once they've been mixed with water and they just get sprayed on externally. I've left some Amazon links below for the US, Australia, UK and Canada if you want to purchase any of these products. So this is my apothecary cupboard, how I keep it all organised, and I restock and replenish it so that it's ready for anything. I hope by the end of the summer I will have it fully restocked and I'll have many tinctures for all sorts of ailments. Thanks so much for watching, subscribing, liking and commenting and supporting my channel.